All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Friday the 13th, Friday, March 13th, 2020. And we are live. So we should be live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. Okay, so we should be live on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, the African History Network. Then on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. And also on Periscope, the AHN Show on Periscope, the AHN Show on Periscope. I think we should be live on Periscope. All right, so I'm testing out the equipment for multi-stream, so I'm streaming on all these platforms at the same time. Then we're on my personal page, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on Facebook as well. All right, so I wanted to do a and let's turn down the volume there. Okay, so how's everybody doing today? So I wanted to do an update on what's going on with the coronavirus. We know a national emergency was declared today by Donald John Trump. He held a press conference where he told once again a bunch of lies. In his press conference, he was very disrespectful to Yamiche Alcindor, who is an African American female reporter, journalist, very good, by the way. And also I want to do an update with that. We know the House of Representatives struck a deal with Steve Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury Department, for a multi-billion-dollar coronavirus package to help everyday Americans, not bail out Wall Street, not bail out corporations, but help everyday Americans, which includes free testing and paid sick leave as well. So we'll deal with that. This all deals with how politics impacts every aspect of our lives. This deals with how politics, how laws, policies, etc., how they create the economic environment that your business operates within. So you got a lot of people who think it's just economic empowerment and don't vote and we don't need politics. No, politics. If politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics impacts business, creates the environment that business operates within. But also when we see all these closures of schools, we see closures, we see cancellations of all different types of events, cancellations of festivals, etc. I was supposed to speak in Baltimore, Maryland at the 19th annual Baltimore Natural Hair Care Expo at the end of this year. That's canceled. We see festivals, South by Southwest in Texas is canceled. We see Coachella, they're at least postponed. Coachella's postponed. We see the NBA has suspended the rest of the season. They have at least 2 players who have tested positive. We see National Hockey League, Major League Soccer. All of these delaying all this. This is billions of dollars that's being lost when this takes place. So this impacts African American businesses as well. Because when you have a lot of people not going to work, everybody doesn't have paid sick leave. Everybody can't telecommute. Only about 1/3 of the labor force can telecommute. A lot of them cannot. So we're going to do an update on the coronavirus and what's going on. But also specifically, I'm going to focus on the impact that this is having on low-wage African-American workers and how it's going to be low-wage African-American workers who are going to be hurt the most and hit the hardest by the coronavirus. One, the economic impact that this has on the economy and how it hurts, how it will hurt many low-wage African-American employees. 2, how the coronavirus will impact those same employees, many of them who don't have health insurance. Okay, so we're going to look at that. I looked at a number of different articles. There's some good information dealing with that, and oftentimes this is not talked about. All right, so let's jump into this, and I'm trying to see why the description didn't show up here of the broadcast. So we got to try to get that up somehow as well. The broadcast here dealing with the coronavirus. All right, so we'll get them learning this technology here. I'm using Zoom and Restream. Okay, the broadcast on all these platforms. So we're going to deal with coronavirus update. Low-wage black workers will be hurt the most by the coronavirus. We'll deal with House Democrats and the White House agreed to a funding deal for free coronavirus testing, paid emergency leave. We'll deal with how Trump falsely blames President Barack Obama for testing shortages. He's just lying. He's just telling all these lies. Trump falsely blames President Barack Obama for testing shortages, and Trump misstated the role that Google was playing in mitigating the outbreak. Okay, so he held his press conference today. It was the last 30 minutes that the stock market was open, because the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the stock markets, they close at 4:30. So he held it for I think last maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that, that the stock market was open. He had CEOs of corporations there. That was all designed to boost the stock market. That's what that was about. That was all designed to boost the stock market. Game recognizes game. Okay, let me see if I can update the, just 1 second. Let me put the information in here, the description, okay? So we're going to look at some live updates from Washington Post and also NBC News and New York Times. And we've got some fact checking to do on Trump as well, because he continues to lie on President Barack Obama. And it was Yamiche Alcindor who called him out. He said it was a very nasty question. Okay, you know, a lot of times he treats African American female reporters in a disrespectful manner. This is the second time that I know of that he treated Yamiche Alcindor disrespectfully like that. Okay. All right, let's see. Can I go in and how's everybody doing? Shella and Taryn. I'm trying to see if I can update and you, as fate would have it, they've got a new whole layout here for Facebook for broadcasting. I gotta learn this also. Damn. Okay, but let's continue. All right, so let's look at the updates from Washington Post. All right, so second person who visited Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last weekend tests positive, and Trump declares national emergency. So Donald Trump declared a national emergency over the coronavirus pandemic on Friday, March 13th. As public life in America continued to grind to a halt, Trump's announcement sent the Dow Jones Industrial Average soaring nearly 2,000 points. Concerns about the coronavirus rippled across the globe as schools closed to millions of students. More events were canceled. More landmarks shuttered, like the Washington Monument. And the group of 7 leaders planned a virtual crisis conference. Okay, so after facing heated bipartisan criticism, the Trump administration announced a series of steps to boost the availability of tests, and said it would partner with the private sector to set up drive-through testing sites. Now, this is stuff that should have happened at least a month ago. Okay, the U.S. is really behind the curve. The Trump administration is really behind the curve on this. And you're going to hear some more information about what happened when Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar tried to bring this information to Trump's attention, and it was in January, okay, and it was largely ignored. All right, all this stuff was avoidable if Trump hadn't shut down things like the predict pandemic preparedness program that operated under George W. Bush and President Barack Obama, okay, which was designed to monitor these viruses in various countries, and one of those countries was China. If he had not shut down that in October 2019, we wouldn't be dealing with this. Read the article. You've heard me talk about it before from Vox.com, V-O-X, Vox.com. A crucial federal program tracking dangerous diseases is shutting down. A crucial federal program tracking dangerous diseases is shutting down. Okay. Predict, a pandemic preparedness program thrived under Bush and Obama. Now it's canceled. So this article is from October 29th, 2019. I'll give you, we'll post the links here to the names of these articles. All right. And just bear with me here because I'm operating with, I got multiple screens open here, monitoring all of this. All right. So ever since the 2005 H5N1 bird flu scare, the U.S. Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, has run a project to track and reach these diseases called PREDICT. It's called PREDICT. At a cost of $207 million during its existence, the program has collected more than 100,000 samples and found nearly 1,000 novel viruses. Including a new Ebola virus. But on Friday in October 2019, the New York Times reported that the U.S. government is shutting down the program. According to its former director, Dennis Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L, the U.S. government is shutting down the program. According to its former director, Dennis Carroll, the program enjoyed enthusiastic support under George W. Bush and President Barack Obama, but things got complicated in the last few years until the program essentially collapsed. Okay, so all of this was avoidable. All right, Trump has no clue what he's doing. This is part of the problem. This is an example of how elections have consequences. This is what happens when you have someone who is incompetent as president. Okay, a mistake like this can't happen again. Seriously. Okay, because people's lives are at stake. Literally, people's lives are at stake. All right, so let's go back to the live updates. Okay, so a second person who visited Donald Trump's private Mar-a-Lago estate last weekend has tested positive for the coronavirus. Okay, now Donald Trump to date has not taken the test that he's admitted to. He has not taken one. Donald Trump has been near 2 people in 2 days who have tested positive. We know that the president of Brazil, who Trump met with on Saturday, this past Saturday, there was one report from the New York Post that said he tested positive, and that was based upon local news sources there in Brazil. You saw we posted those articles. And then there was one from, and then we saw that there was another update to that article that came out where President of Brazil, Bolsonaro, denied that he tested positive. So we'll see what happens. But we do know rawstory.com had the article today, and we posted that as well. Trump touched the microphone at the press conference today 31 times. He shook hands with people there. So he has come in contact with at least one person that we know of who has tested positive for it, and he's come in contact with other people who at the CPAC conference who came in contact with someone who tested positive as well. So the World Health Organization warned that Europe, quote, has now become the epicenter of the pandemic. Europe has now become the epicenter of the pandemic. And Miami Mayor Francis Suarez said he tested positive for the virus after attending an event in Florida with a top Brazilian government aide who has also tested positive. A senior Australian official also tested positive just days after meeting with U.S. Attorney General William Barr in Washington. So U.S. Attorney General William Barr met with someone who tested positive. We know Donald Trump, they have a picture of Donald Trump with a guy who is a senior aide high-ranking official in Brazil. This person tested positive. Donald Trump in the picture standing next to him. That's from this past Saturday. And then we already know that you have Republican senators, the members of the House of Representatives, who are self-quarantining. We know that Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is self-quarantining. We know that Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, who the dumbass sitting on the House of Representatives floor with the gas mask on, okay, mocking the coronavirus. And then a couple of days after that, he had one of his constituents in his district who died from the coronavirus. Okay, so all of this is, you're going to see more because a lot of these senators are in their 70s, 60s, 70s. You got some late 70s, may have some early 80s. So they're very vulnerable. All right, so scientists have found that the coronavirus can stay infectious for days on some surfaces. Now, this is one of the new developments. I saw articles about this a couple of days ago. Okay, they also discovered that the coronavirus can be shed by people before they develop symptoms and can linger in the body for many weeks. So they're learning because this is, even though there have been other coronaviruses, this strain of the coronavirus is new. All right, so they're still learning a lot about it. Okay, let's see here. How's everybody doing? Just bear with me here while I navigate this technology. Okay, everybody share this broadcast on your social media pages. Invite your friends to tune in also. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Current promotion, buy 1 month, get 2 months free. Also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. And then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. All right, let's continue here. All right, let's flip over here. Everything's running a little slowly. So I got about 50 tabs open. All right. Here's another article for you as well. Trump says he can bring in coronavirus experts quickly. The experts say it's not that simple. This is from the Washington Post. One of the problems is Trump has gotten rid of a lot of scientists. So there's been a hollowing out of scientists, of the officials, things like this. And Trump is under the impression that you can just bring them back, like you lay off people who work at General Motors making the Cadillac Escalades on the third shift, and you lay them off when demand dies down for Cadillac Escalades, and then when demand picks up, then you just bring them back to make more Cadillac Escalades. This is how he's thinking, and it doesn't work that way. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let's go back over. All right. So we know that Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, struck a deal with Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, today, that is going to provide a lot of aid for those hit by the coronavirus, to bring some financial relief also. That's excellent. That is an example of government and politics working on behalf of the everyday people, not Wall Street, not the cruise lines, not corporations, but everyday people. Also, I posted an article today where internet providers, internet companies like Comcast, for the next 60 days, they're not going to shut people's internet service off because a lot of people will be negatively impacted. They can't go to work, can't make as much money. You have 6 million people in the gig economy, probably about 5.8, 5.9, 6 million people in what's known as the gig economy, the Ubers and things like this, and they're going to be hit because when you have a cancellation of conferences, cancellation of festivals, when people are not traveling, you have less people staying in hotels, less people going to restaurants, less people using ride sharing. So this is going to hit people all across all throughout the economy. It's already doing that. All right. Okay, so let's look at some more of the updates here. Restaurant traffic takes a hit in Washington, D.C. and worldwide. We were just talking about this. Restaurant traffic takes a hit in Washington, D.C. and worldwide. So restaurant traffic has taken a dive in the last week, according to data from the reservation service Open Table, the reservation service Open Table, with seated diners down 31% globally and 32% nationally Thursday compared to a year ago. Okay, seated diners down 31. I was just at a soul food restaurant. I don't eat soul food a lot. I had vegetarian stuff, and there's only 3 things I could eat: potato salad, 2 helpings of green beans, and what else did I have? They put in the sweet potatoes, they put sugar, so I couldn't have that. What else did I have? Mashed potatoes. So if y'all own a soul food restaurant, you know somebody owns a soul food restaurant, can y'all start serving some salad for people who are vegetarians? Can y'all start serving some salad, please? I'm just saying, okay? You make it very hard on vegetarians trying to support African American owned businesses going to a soul food restaurant. So the COVID-19 pandemic is making many of us stay home, and our community of nearly 60,000 restaurants is facing a severe reduction in diners, said Open Table Chief Operating Officer Andrea Johnston, who wrote this on the company blog, noting that things seem to be getting worse quickly. Worse quickly. Wait till you see the job numbers the first Friday of April from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Oh, it's going to be horrific. It's going to be a bloodbath. You know, you're not going to see Donald Trump tweeting about those. Okay? So, once again, let me explain this to people, because many of our people are confused when it comes to economic empowerment. And they just think as long as you own businesses and invest in the stock market, things like this, you don't need economics. No, you don't need politics. No, that's not true. Politics, laws, government regulations regulate your business and create the economic environment that your business operates within. Not only that, it impacts how much money people have to come spend at your business, so you stay in business. Okay? So a lot of this we have backwards. We don't understand how both of these work together. So I'm somebody, my degree's in business administration with a major in marketing. I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. I did business consulting for 7 years. Did business consulting with nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations. I managed a company for one of my former college professors, and we had contracts with the city of Detroit, county of Wayne. Wayne is the county that Detroit is in. County of Wayne and state of Michigan. So I've worked so I have experience working with city government, county government, and state government, and seeing how politics at the city, county, state level impact business. Okay, and also I was involved in, I sat on the committee to rewrite Executive Order 22 in the Kwame Kilpatrick administration also. So I got to be involved in writing public policy as well for a major city also. So that also gives you see the other side of how politics and government impacts business as well. That dealt with contracts for construction projects in the city of Detroit that excluding road construction projects. And it was designed to put requirements on the percentage of Detroiters who had to be hired on construction projects that were paid for by the city of Detroit. Okay, so more Detroiters got jobs on city-funded construction projects. Okay, so the COVID-19 pandemic is making many of us stay home. In our community of nearly 60,000 restaurants is facing a severe reduction in diners. Open Table Chief Operating Officer Andrea Johnston wrote on a company blog, noting that, quote, things seem to be getting worse quickly, end quote, and they are. For a lot of these businesses, It's going to be a bloodbath. At the city level, Thursday's restaurant traffic was down 37% in Washington, the state of Washington, 52% in New York City, 38% in Los Angeles. So 37% in Washington, maybe Washington, D.C. It doesn't say D.C. Maybe Washington, D.C. since they were already talking about Washington, D.C. 37, Thursday's restaurant traffic was down 37% in Washington, 52% in New York City, 38% in Los Angeles, 58% in Seattle, Washington, and 22% in Miami compared to 1 year earlier. So, Open Table Chief Operating Officer Andrea Johnson went on to write, "Please support your local restaurants during this turbulent time." And she was suggesting home delivery as an alternative to going out. Another option is to buy restaurant gift cards for further use. Okay, so this is a time to support African American owned restaurants as much as possible, I think, because they are more likely to employ our own people. Okay, so I mean, I can't stress this enough, because you have some people who think we don't need to vote in the presidential election. And I have to sit there and look at them and ask, where the hell do you get your news from if you think that? I don't understand that. Okay? So it's not about a political party. I don't belong to a political party. It's not about a political party. You can be independent, you can be Democrat, you can be Republican, whatever. It's about the policies. It's about the policies that will impact you and your community and African Americans across the country. It's about the policies, not about the political party. It's about the policies. It's not about the personality. But you need somebody who's mentally competent and stable and will listen to the experts and operate based upon the information from the experts, as opposed to thinking they know more than the generals and they never fought in a war before, as opposed to thinking they know more than the scientists and they're not a scientist. And we've never seen their grades from school because Trump used his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, who's now in a federal prison, to suppress his transcripts from high school and basically college also. We ain't never seen his grades. Okay? While he demanded the transcripts from President Barack Obama because he didn't think a black man could achieve what he did and become editor of the Harvard Law Review and graduate from Columbia College and graduate from Harvard Law School, things like that. Right? So he's suppressing his transcripts while he demands the transcripts from the black president. Okay. So public health officials have cautioned against large gatherings and recommended that older people, especially those older than 80, avoid person-to-person contact. Okay, now when you go to the CDC, go to cdc.gov. cdc.gov has guidelines there, because the CDC, they're talking about people starting at 60, not 80. They're telling people 60 years old or older don't fly on planes, don't go on cruises. BusinessInsider.com had an article citing the CDC where they're basically telling people 60 years old or older, especially those with compromised immune systems, stay home as much as possible. Stock up on your medicine, stock up on groceries, stay home as much as possible. Okay? Now, let's see here. Rhode Island Elementary School, a Rhode Island elementary school student has been infected with the coronavirus by a NBA player. A Rhode Island elementary school student was infected with the coronavirus by an NBA player while getting an autograph during a Utah Jazz Boston Celtics game on March 6th. Westerly police confirmed in a news conference on Friday. Jazz center Rudy Gobert, and shooting guard Donovan Mitchell tested positive. So we know about that. We reported on that yesterday for you. And just a second here, let me try to Reboot the second computer's freezing up on me. So they tested positive. So some of you all saw the footage of Rudy Gobert at the press conference where he was mocking the coronavirus, making fun of it. Okay, you know, Corona is kicking Donald Trump's behind. Coronavirus is kicking Donald Trump's behind because it's not something that he can tweet away. It's not something he can sue. He can't file a lawsuit against the coronavirus. He can't intimidate it, things like this. But there's going to be people out here playing around, thinking it's a joke, all this stuff. Okay, Corona going to kick you behind. All right. I don't wish anything negatively on any people or most people, you know. But there's going to be some people playing around thinking it's a joke. Okay. So, Jazz center Rudy Gobert and shooting guard Donovan Mitchell tested positive, while police chief Sean Lacey did not specify during the news conference which player signed the student's autograph. He later told Boston.com, a Boston news publication, Boston.com, that the child's parents told him it was Rudy Gobert. So we know the NBA suspended its season after Rudy Gobert was confirmed to have the coronavirus. I think when the NBA suspended the rest of the season, I think that got the attention of a whole lot of people, especially African Americans who may have not been paying attention. I think it got the attention of a whole lot of people. Now, at a news conference on Monday, 3 days after coming into contact with the Rhode Island student, Rudy Gobert joked about the coronavirus and touched all the microphones and recording devices that reporters had placed on the table in front of him. 2 days later, he tested positive. Now, you saw the press conference that Donald Trump did today. According to the count from rawstory.com, he touched the microphone 31 times. He was up there shaking hands with people, things like this. In a time of a crisis, you need a president who is going to set the proper example for people to follow. You remember the movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy? You remember the character in Life can't get right? You remember him? I think he couldn't talk and he ended up getting the white girl pregnant. Who was the white girl? She was the daughter of the jail warden, the prison warden, and he ended up getting her pregnant, and they found out he could play baseball, so he got signed to a baseball team. And you remember him? Can't get right. That's Trump. Can't get right. So, Police Chief Sean Lacey wouldn't say how old the child is, but he confirmed that there were 2 young patients, one in 2nd grade and the other in preschool, who had tested positive for the coronavirus but are being isolated at home. So I hope they're all right. You know, we don't want anything to happen to them. Hope they're okay. Let me see something here. Okay, how we coming through on YouTube? How's everybody doing on YouTube? Deli Man, Castex Finance. You went to Castech. So did I. Journals of Jade News on Facebook, VC, Arlene, Nayuser, Margaret, Darlene, just a few people watching us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, and then we got people watching this on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. The African History Network, we're broadcasting on Periscope. On Periscope also, the AHN Show on Periscope. Okay, so just bear with me because I'm broadcasting on 4 different pages here, and I'm getting used to the multi-stream technology here, and I'm using Zoom to broadcast through multi-stream. All right. Let's see, why isn't this copying? Okay, so you're going to have a whole lot of people who are going to realize this is not a joke. You're going to have a whole lot of people who are going to realize this is not a joke, this is not a game, this is serious, all right? Okay, let's continue here. So we saw at least 14 states have shut down all the K through 12 schools. I feel sorry for parents. Oh my God. Oh my God. So Donald Trump announced the expansion of drive-through testing, but details remain sketchy. Okay, that was at the press conference today. Trump announced Friday that the government is partnering with private companies to set up drive-through coronavirus testing sites after a week of unrelenting criticism from lawmakers and frustrated Americans unable to find out whether they might be infected. Now, you remember it was just last Friday when he was at the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, in Atlanta, and he said anybody who wants a test can get a test. Anybody who wants a test can get a test. That was a lie. That wasn't true at all. One. Two, there's still a huge shortage of tests. Even though 1 million tests allegedly reached healthcare facilities, and by next week there's going to be 4 million tests. Numerous reports are coming in from doctors who are saying they don't have the tests to be able to test patients to see whether they have the coronavirus or not. Now, at a Rose Garden news conference, Donald Trump said the push to let people get tested from their vehicles would involve a new Google website to advise consumers about whether they should get tested and where, and big box companies and drugstores that would host drive-through testing sites in their store parking lots. State and federal health workers would staff the sites and perform the testing, officials said. But several key participants said the administration was overstating the plans, including its scope, timetable, and other aspects. So a lot of people, including me, suspect that Trump just stood there and told these damn lies to drive the stock market up, because his press conference was shortly before the stock market closes. The stock market closes at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, well, actually 4 p.m. up to 4 p.m. It starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, closes at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So he's standing there with the CEOs from Target. There's like 4 CEOs there. And a lot of people think this was all designed to drive the stock market up. Okay? But several key participants said the administration was overstating the plans, including its scope, timetable, and other aspects. Quote, "This surprised all of us," end quote, said one state health official who requested anonymity to speak frankly about how state health departments had gotten no advance notice. "This surprised all of us. This is bizarre," the official said, pointing out that many of the U.S. Public Health Service's 6,000 officers are deployed elsewhere and could not readily be shifted. So Wednesday night, when he did his Oval Office address, he sat there reading from a teleprompter, and he lied about some of his own policies. Like he sat there and lied and said that health insurance companies had agreed to waive the cost of treatment for coronavirus. That wasn't true. They agreed to waive the cost of testing, not the cost of treatment. So you sit there and you come to the conclusion that this guy just can't be trusted, period. What Trump said earlier this week, so this is from Wednesday, okay? Earlier this week, I met with the leaders of health insurance with the leaders of health insurance industry who have agreed to waive all co-payments for coronavirus treatments, extend insurance coverage to these treatments, and to prevent surprise medical billing. Not long after his speech, however, a representative for the insurance industry group America's Health Insurance Plans told Politico.com, that major health insurers had agreed to waive co-pays only for coronavirus testing. not the far more costly coronavirus treatments. He just sat there and just lied. He's reading from a teleprompter and still lying. So this is why you saw me post on my Facebook page. It was Wednesday, either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Wednesday. I said Donald Trump suffers from a pre-existing condition called diabetes. Diabetes occurs when you have an uncontrollable desire or need to lie, even when you know you're telling a lie. You lie about small stuff, you lie about big stuff, you lie about lies that you told. Donald Trump suffers from a pre-existing condition called diabetes. Luckily for him, Obamacare covers pre-existing conditions. So, let's see here. Okay, so we have that press conference, and then let's go through and look at. We're going to do some fact checking on those lies he told at the press conference today, just so you're not fooled by that stuff. That was designed to drive the stock market up, because the stock market. So, BusinessInsider.com had an article that we posted. It talked about how $11.5 trillion in value had been wiped out over the past couple of weeks, something like that. Okay, since Trump is the 11.5 trillion over the past maybe 2 weeks has been wiped out in value. It wiped out all the gains in the Dow Jones Industrial Average that Trump has acquired since January 20th, 2017, since he took the oath of office. BusinessInsider.com, that's an article dealing with that. We know on Thursday, the largest one-day drop in history took place, about 2,300 points. Largest drop since 1987. We see the Washington Monument will suspend public tours, officials say. Trump offers support for cruise lines while asking them to stop sailing. Trump offers support for cruise lines while asking them to stop sailing. Donald Trump on Friday, let's see here, let's get this going again. Okay. Donald Trump on Friday praised the battered cruise industry and shut it down in the United States for a month. In a tweet late Friday, he said major operators, Carnival Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and MSC had agreed to his request that they halt outbound sailings from the United States for 30 days, effective at midnight Friday night. The Cruise Lines International Association confirmed the tweet soon after, saying ocean-going lines would be voluntarily and temporarily suspending cruise ship operations from and to U.S. ports of call. Earlier in the afternoon, Trump spoke in support of the cruise industry, whose largest three companies are headquartered in the Miami area, but incorporated in other countries. Interesting. Quote, as far as the cruise line business, we're with them all the way, end quote, he said during the news conference. It's a great business. It's a great U.S. business. Now, if you saw the press conference today, he wasn't too thrilled about the bill that Nancy Pelosi and Democrats in the House of Representatives were trying to get a deal on with Steve Mnuchin. And not only that, Trump is not even involved in those negotiations. They're keeping him out. See, they learn, because if you want to deal with how elections have consequences, you want to deal with what happens when you have somebody who's not competent in the White House, you go back to December 2018, January 2019, Trump's 35-day partial government shutdown, which really hurt the economy. It was devastating for many African Americans who were federal employees, or you had a family member, maybe you were married to a federal employee and they had to go to work and they didn't get paid for a month, okay? Or you were an African American business that has a federal contract with the government, okay? And either you were idle for a month, weren't getting paid, so your employees are not getting paid, or possibly maybe you had to still provide services and had to wait a month or so to get paid. It was horrific. It really hurt a lot of African American owned businesses. A lot of African Americans, 18% of federal workers are African Americans, and 11% of federal contracting companies are African American companies as well. So this impacts economics. What's taking place in Washington D.C. and the decisions that are coming. He walked out he walked away from the deal with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and it caused a 35-day partial government shutdown. It was devastating for African American farmers because the bailout for the farmers was delayed because of Trump's government shutdown. They needed the bailout because of his trade war with China. And the bailout for the farmers, they've allocated $30 billion for the bailout. That's basically twice the amount of the auto bailout under President Obama, which saved the auto industry, by the way, and saved 1 million jobs nationwide. So this all deals with understanding how politics impacts the economy, how it impacts our everyday lives, and how it impacts African American owned businesses. Okay, so all right, so you got Trump and the cruise lines. Now, states across the country, governors and states across the country, including the state of Michigan where I am, have closed the schools for either 2 weeks, 3 weeks, K through 12 schools. 14 states and several major cities closed K through 12 schools. This is real. 14 states are closing all their public schools. 14 states are closing all their public schools, as are several large urban districts, including Los Angeles, the nation's second largest, and Washington, D.C. Now, District of Columbia schools will be closed starting Monday through March 31st. Mayor Mario E. Bowser, Democrat, said Friday schools plan to resume normal operations April 1st. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice, Republican, announced Friday that all schools in his state will close indefinitely. As of Friday evening, March 13th, Friday the 13th, states that had announced school closures were Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, New Mexico, Utah, West Virginia, and the state of Washington. At least 14 states have shut down schools for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. In Michigan, it starts March 16th. Monday, March 16th is Monday, March 16th until April 6th. You have, like here in the state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer they're going to have lunches for the school children. Is grab and go lunches. Okay, so they can go to different facilities and get lunches, but they don't eat them there because they're trying to reduce the amount of social contacts, the social standing that people have. But they still realize that a lot of children, that's where they get most of their meals, or maybe their only meal is at school. Now, closing schools is a growing trend across the country as state education officials look to contain the spreading coronavirus through social distancing measures. But the efforts present complications for families who rely on public education for food access and child care. So in the bill that the deal reached between the House of Representatives and Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin, who's negotiating on behalf of the White House because Trump is too incompetent to negotiate, you have paid leave in the bill also. We'll get to that in just a minute because that's extremely important. So state officials who had previously seemed reluctant to shutter schools or close schools changed course Friday when a cascade of states began announcing closures. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said Thursday he did not plan to close schools, but he said during a news conference Friday his thinking changed after contemplating new information that came in overnight and throughout the day. He also said he had been thinking about state officials' decision to limit large gatherings. So you hear Governor Jay Inslee talking about not having large gatherings of a certain, maybe 250. One governor says 250. Another governor says no large gatherings of people 500 or more, things like this. There's nothing scientific about that. I've seen numerous doctors talk about this. There's nothing scientific about that. They just, I don't know where they're getting these numbers from. Okay. Here in the state of Michigan, if I remember correctly, Governor Gretchen Whitmer said no gatherings of people of 100 or more. Okay, but there's no social gathering saying it should be 500 or more, 250 or more, 200 or more, 100. No. Quote, I really came to the conclusion that we're telling adults essentially don't gather in large groups. But we're telling kids that you can bump up against each other in a hallway even if you might not have an assembly, end quote, Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois said. Now, Oregon, the state of Oregon, had worked hard to keep schools open, but student absences and workforce issues there had made it impossible to functionally operate schools, said Governor Kate Brown. Earlier this week, Governor Kate Brown of the state of Oregon banned gatherings of more than 250 people, another social distancing rule being adopted across the country. An increasing number of cities and other localities, including Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, and Sacramento, have made similar moves. The state of Kentucky stopped short of a mandatory order, but recommended that all schools, both public and private, halt in-person classes. The state of Florida also provided strong recommendations that school extend spring break. The state of Florida also provided strong recommendations that schools extend spring break. Now, in all, at least 46,000 schools were closed, scheduled to close, or had closed and reopened as of Friday, March 13th, according to the publication Education Week, with at least 26 million students affected. Now, the state of Idaho is the 49th state as of today, as of March 13th, the 49th state to announce coronavirus within its borders. Let's see here. Okay, we know Carnival Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian Cruise Lines halt cruises temporarily. Let's be honest. How many people actually want to go on a cruise right now? I mean, you couldn't give me a cruise. You can give me a free cruise right now. I mean, no. I mean, you can give me a free cruise if it was 3,000 women on the cruise and I was the only man. No. Donald Trump said in a tweet late Friday that at his request, several cruise lines, including Carnival and Royal Caribbean, had agreed to suspend cruises leaving the United States for 30 days, as I stated earlier. The Cruise Line International Association confirmed the suspension less than 15 minutes later. So I went to the barbershop today. I was talking to my barber. My barber knows, is in downtown Detroit, so we got everybody coming in, business people, lawyers, things like this, man. He said he talked to people who were travel agents. Oh my God, the travel agents are losing business. Airlines are losing business. Uber drivers losing business. All of this could have been avoided. If Donald Trump had not cut funding to the CDC, closed the pandemic preparedness program called Predict. If Donald Trump had not destroyed a lot of this stuff, the majority of this could have been avoided. Let's see here. So let's look at the. Trump shook hands, patted backs, and touched the microphone 31 times during a news conference. Donald Trump at a Friday news conference touted the work of his administration, health experts on coronavirus, even as he ignored the public health advice. Now, you standing there with Dr. Anthony Fauci. You standing there with other doctors. The Friday before last, Well, last Friday, when you were at the CDC in Atlanta, you talked about how you really get this stuff and how the doctors were so surprised at how much you know. And maybe you should have gone and become a scientist instead of being a politician, become a president, all this stuff. And then you ignore the advice from the scientists, from the doctors. He's just like a little 2-year-old. Trump shook hands, patted backs, and touched the microphone at the White House podium at least 31 times at the Rose Garden event. The sort of behaviors health experts and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have advised against to prevent the spread of the goddamn virus that he's there meeting about. When the last executive had finished speaking, Trump offered him a handshake. LHC Group Executive Vice President Bruce Greenstein said, offering Trump an elbow bump instead. We'll practice that. Trump said, okay, I like that. That's good. Before adjusting the microphone with his hand yet again. Let's see here. Oh, so we know Donald Trump doesn't take responsibility when things go wrong. Now, he tried to claim responsibility for stuff President Obama did right. When things go wrong under Trump, he tries to blame President Obama for it. He tries to take responsibility for the economy to the tank. Try to take responsibility for the stock market, which was going up consistently under President Obama. Try to take advantage. He tried to take credit for low unemployment rate. You had over 100 months of consecutive 100 months of consecutive private sector job growth that started under the Obama administration. Most of that under the Obama administration. Try to take credit for all that. So Trump told Yamiche Alcindor today of PBS NewsHour at the press conference when she asked him a legitimate question. I sent her a tweet today. She asked him a legitimate question. He said, I don't take responsibility. Trump says delays in testing was not the fault of the White House. Speaking in the Rose Garden on Friday, Donald Trump said he does not take responsibility for the delays and shortages that have reduced testing for the novel coronavirus in the United States. He said, I don't take responsibility at all because we were given a set of circumstances and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time that was not meant for this kind of event with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. When pressed by Yamiche Alcindor, who's an African-American female journalist, very good at what she does, she's a White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour. When Trump was pressed by her about the White House dismantling the Office on Pandemics, Donald Trump called the question, quote unquote, nasty. He didn't call, I don't think he called any other journalist question nasty today. And Trump suggested that Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, knew something that he did not. Trump said, I didn't do it, he said. Quote, I could perhaps ask Tony about that because I don't know anything about it. I mean, you say we did that, but I don't know anything about it, end quote. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who works, who's the director of the National Institute of Health and the NIH, National Institute of Health, does not have purview over the National Security Council, which the team worked for. Okay, so if we go look at this article from foreignpolicy.com, which breaks this down, because Tom Bossert, and you go watch the broadcast I did March 12th. Tom Bossert, who was the former director of Homeland Security, wrote an op-ed article from the Washington Post talking about how we're only about 10 days away. Now it's probably 7 days away. No, he wrote that Monday. So we may be about 5 days away from hospitals being overran if mitigation is not practiced and successful. So it looks like it'll probably be successful with all the closings. Mitigation deals with avoiding a spike in the people who have to go to hospitals. Hospitals are then overran. There's only about 925,000 hospital beds in the U.S. Hospitals are overran. They already have sick people there. And then they will be overran with people who have the coronavirus, and you won't be able to give them the proper attention. You won't have enough hospital beds for the people who have to stay at the hospital, maybe self-quarantine. You won't have enough respirators, ventilators for people who have respiratory, who already have pre-existing conditions, respiratory issues, etc. So it can become a disaster. All right, so the social distancing that's taking place is designed to slow down the spread of the coronavirus. So the people who actually have it and the people who have to go to the hospital and actually having to go to the hospital does not exceed the capacity of the hospital. That's what all this is about, trying to avoid that. Okay, so Trump also called the question asked by Yamiche Alcindor, the White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, nasty. Now, in May 2018, after John Bolton became National Security Advisor with the departure of Rear Admiral Timothy Zimmer from the National Security Council, a team working on global health security under him was disbanded, the Washington Post reported at the time. Beth Cameron, the former senior director for global health security and biodefense on the White House National Security Council, said in a Washington Post editorial on Friday that the decision most likely slowed the federal response to the coronavirus pandemic. She said, quote, "It is clear that eliminating the office has contributed to the federal government's sluggish domestic response," Cameron wrote. "What's especially concerning about the absence of this office today is that it was originally set up because a previous epidemic made the need for it quite clear. A previous epidemic made the need for it quite clear." Trump has no clue what he's doing. Public health experts at the time said the staffing change signaled that the administration did not prioritize science. Trump has declared war. He's waged a war against the scientists for 2 years. There's an article from BusinessInsider.com that talks about this and the cuts he's made to the different agencies. Let me see if we have that one here. Yeah, Trump spent the past 2 years slashing the government agencies responsible for handling the coronavirus. This is from February 25th, 2020. Trump spent the past 2 years slashing the government agencies responsible for handling the coronavirus. Trump insisted that the coronavirus known as COVID-19 virus is under control because China is working very hard. This was a couple of weeks ago. Probably about 2.5, almost 3 weeks ago. Let's see here. Here are some of the other actions the Trump administration undertook to dismantle government spending programs related to fighting the spread of the global diseases. In 2018, for instance, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, cut 80% of its efforts to prevent global disease outbreaks because it was running out of money. Ultimately, the department went from working in 49 countries to just 10 countries. That's from the article. They cite the article from foreignpolicy.com. They go on to list some of the other actions the Trump administration undertook to dismantle government spending. Shutting down the entire global health security unit of the National Security Council, eliminating the U.S. government's $30 million complex crisis fund, reducing national health spending by $15 billion, consistently attacking Mark Green, the director of the U.S. Agency for International Development. Okay, we'll post a link to this article here so you can check that out. Well, if we look at the article from foreignpolicy.com, in May of 2018, Donald Trump ordered the National Security Council's entire global health security unit shut down. This is what Yamiche Alcindor was talking about today. In May of 2018, Donald Trump ordered the National Security Council's entire global health security unit shut down, calling for reassignment of Rear Admiral Timothy Zimmer and dissolution of his team inside the agency. The month before, then White House National Security Advisor John Bolton pressured Timothy Zimmer's Department of Homeland Security counterpart Tom Bossert. Tom Bossert just wrote an article this past Monday for the Washington Post. Pressured Tom Bossert to resign along with his team. Neither the National Security Council nor the Department of Homeland Security's epidemic teams have been replaced. Now, this article from foreignpolicy.com is from January 31st, 2020. January 31st, 2020. Neither the National Security Council nor the Department of Homeland Security's epidemic teams have been replaced. The global health section of the Center for Disease Control was so drastically cut in 2018 that much of its staff was laid off, and the number of countries it was working in was reduced from 49 countries to merely 10 countries. Meanwhile, throughout 2008, the U.S. Agency for International Development, that's USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and its director, Mark Green, came repeatedly under fire from both the White House and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And though Congress has so far managed to block the Trump administration's plan to cut the U.S. Public Health Service Commission core by 40%, the disease-fighting cadres have steadily eroded as retiring officers go unreplaced. So there has been an erosion, there's been a hollowing out of these various agencies and these projects that would have seen the coronavirus, COVID-19, coming and gotten ahead of it so they can head it off and really reduce the severity of it. So you don't have to have social distancing. So you don't have to have people being laid off from work and losing revenue and things like this. All this was avoidable. So then this article from foreignpolicy.com, and I'll give you the, we'll post the links here to all these when I'm done. This article from foreignpolicy.com ties into the article from Vox.com from October 2019. The one from foreignpolicy.com is January 31st, 2020, where it says, throughout 2018, the U.S. Agency for International Aid, also known as U.S. Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, and its director Mark Green came repeatedly under fire from both the White House and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. That was throughout 2018. October through 2019, the project was shut down, and that's called Predict. So that's what the article from Vox.com is talking about from October 2019. A crucial federal program tracking dangerous diseases is shutting down. Predict, a pandemic preparedness program, thrived under George W. Bush and President Barack Obama. Now it's canceled. Okay. Ever since the 2005 H5N1 bird flu scare, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, has run a project to track and research these diseases. The name of the project is called Predict. At a cost of $207 million during its existence, the program has collected more than 100,000 samples and found nearly 1,000 novel viruses, including a new Ebola virus. But on Friday, in October 2019, the New York Times reported that the U.S. government is shutting down the program. is shutting down the program. According to its former director, Dennis Carroll, the program enjoyed enthusiastic support under Bush and Obama, but things got complicated in the last few years until the program essentially collapsed. All this was avoidable. Okay, so we saw that you had the deal struck today with between Nancy Pelosi and Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin. NBCnews.com has a good article dealing with this. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. I'm waiting for this to load up. I literally have about 70 tabs open because I do research all throughout the day. You see the articles that I post. So I literally have 70 tabs open. I need to close some of these tabs. It's slowing down the computer. We're broadcasting on our YouTube channel while this loads up. Shout out to everybody on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep on YouTube. Our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. My personal page on Facebook, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and for the second time in 3 years on Periscope, the AHN show on Periscope. Okay, African American business owners, post the name of your business here in the thread of the broadcast. We know African American business owners are looking at new ways to bring in to get new customers. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. We can get you up and running today. Our current promotion, which we have going on for a few more days, buy 1 month, get 2 months free. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. So, I have my criticisms with Nancy Pelosi, but I'm glad that she's Speaker of the House. She got to deal with this ignorant ass Donald Trump. House Democrats and White House reach deal on coronavirus aid package. The legislation will be voted on soon, contains provisions for free testing, paid emergency leave, and more. Now, it's going to pass the House. It has to pass the Senate in Moscow, Mitch McConnell in the Senate. So, hopefully it'll pass the Senate. We don't know what's going to happen. Moscow, Mitch McConnell, November 3rd, 2020, he needs to be voted out of office. He's up for re-election. House Democrats and the Trump administration have reached a deal on a coronavirus aid package that includes free testing, paid emergency leave, and other resources intended to help stem the crisis and stabilize the financial markets, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said on Friday. Nancy Pelosi said earlier the House is expected to vote on the bill on Friday, which would send it to the U.S. Senate for a vote as early as Monday. Now, the Senate, Mitch McConnell dismissed the Senate. They're on a brief recess. So they dismissed on Thursday. They don't come back to Monday. You got a crisis going on, but you're going to dismiss the Senate. Originally, it was going to be for about a week, if I remember correctly. So they don't come back to Monday. Okay, all right. Now, we just saw Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. We just saw he blocked the bill in the Senate that was going to give paid sick leave of 2 weeks to people who needed it. He just blocked that bill. All right, I'm waiting for this to load up again here. And let's look here at Facebook, okay? How's everybody doing on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network? Let's see what we have. We've got Yvonne. We've got John Ray, Terry, Vinny, Cliff, Lonnie, on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, okay? All right, I want to very quickly look at some fact checking, and then we're going to get to the main thing dealing with how the coronavirus will negatively impact low-wage African-American workers. It's going to negatively impact them 2 ways. But because of the lies Trump told at the press conference today, while he's trying to drive up the stock market, I want to give you this information, do a little fact checking here. Okay, we have Marnice. Let's see here, and can I go in? I'm going to try to put the title in here. I'm just trying to get used to trying to get used to Restream. Okay, so let's jump into this other topic, and I'll come back to the fact checking. So, finance.yahoo.com had a good article dealing with this, as well as fastcompany.com and blackenterprise.com. Coronavirus to impact low-wage black workers the most. Coronavirus to impact low-wage black workers the most. This is from March 12th, 2020. So low-income and low-wage earners will likely bear the brunt of the economic impact of the coronavirus, experts warn. As the coronavirus continues to slam industries like the travel industry, leisure, and hospitality, workers in these industries also have the lowest amount of access to sick leave or paid sick leave, forcing many employees to choose between their health and their paycheck. Now, only 1/3, so we hear a lot about teleworking or telecommuting, okay? So you have a lot of people who can work from home through the internet, through Zoom conferencing, etc. Well, only 1/3 of the workforce can work from home. Only 31% of workers with salaries in the bottom 10% have paid sick leave. Okay, only 1/3 of workers in the workforce can work from home, and only 31%, or almost 1/3 of workers with salaries in the bottom 10%, have paid sick leave. Now, 92% of high wage earners receive paid sick leave. 92% of high wage earners receive paid sick leave. Only 48% of workers in the leisure and hospitality industry have access to paid sick leave. So when we go through and look at this, we see how laws, so you can have federal legislation dealing with paid sick leave. We know that, for instance, in July 2019, Democrats in the House of Representatives passed a bill to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour by the year 2025. It passed the House of Representatives. It's stuck in the Senate. 433 bills passed in the House of Representatives by Democrats in 2019. 80% die in the Senate. If that passes and gets signed into law, that'll make a huge difference for a lot of African Americans. And I'm not saying they're going to become millionaires, but it'll make a huge difference. It's going to lift some of them out of poverty also. Then also the Paycheck Fairness Act that passed early in 2019 will make a huge difference as well. Now we have to understand. So if you have seen some of my previous broadcasts where I deal with Black Women's Equal Pay Day, this right here was taking place with the coronavirus and how it's going to negatively impact low-wage African American workers. Ties also into Black Women's Equal Pay Day, because we know August 7th, 2019 was Black Women's Equal Pay Day, and what that deals with is how long it takes the average African American female worker to make the same amount of money that it takes the average white male worker to make. So it takes the average African American female 20 months to make the same amount of money it takes the average white male to make in 12 months. So that's called Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And where did I have those articles dealing with that? I just had it. Okay, so you may have seen my broadcast dealing with that. So the average African American woman makes 61 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. And then there's some states where it's lower than 61 cents on every dollar. We know in the state of Louisiana that has the lowest rate, where it's 47 cents for every dollar. So in the state of Louisiana, the average African American woman makes 41 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. I don't know where I put this stuff. I just saw it before the broadcast. Hold on. There's a stack of articles dealing with Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Okay, I don't know where it went. Okay, I literally have about 500 articles here. Well, here it is right here. So blackenterprise.com, Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap, October 17th, 2019. So an African American woman will lose out on $946,120 over a 40-year career if she continues to make 61 cents on the dollar that every white man earns due to the wage gap, analysis by the National Women's Law Center shows. This is an article from blackenterprise.com. If you go back, I did a broadcast dealing with this after it came out, October sometime. And this ties into Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Quote, assuming she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart begin work at age 20. Assuming that she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart began work at age 20. An African American woman would have to work until she is 86 years old to catch up to what a white non-Hispanic man has been paid by age 60. Okay? See, this stuff is real. All right? So, this is an example how elections have consequences. The bill that passed the House of Representatives to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour by the year 2025 has a real impact on the economic conditions of African Americans. Now, that bill doesn't say black, it doesn't say African American, but it will disproportionately positively impact African Americans. The bill don't say black, but it will positively, disproportionately impact African Americans. The National Women's Law Center found that African American women face even larger pay disparity in certain states. In the state of Louisiana, African American women are paid on average 47 cents for every dollar their white non-Hispanic male counterparts make, which is the worst state for black women's wage equality. So the wage equality of African American women is tied to the economic condition of the African American family. One, about 70% of African American families have a single female head of household. One, but two, most African American men, when they get married, they marry African American women. 88% of African American men who get married marry African American women. So that ties into the economic conditions of our communities and our families. And then so raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour will also positively impact African American men as well. There's a significant racial wealth gap in America, and African American women's wage gap certainly plays a role in it, said Emily Martin, Vice President for Education and Workplace Justice. For many black women, the cost of the lifetime wage gap comes to $1 million, and in some states it's more. It's time for the U.S. Senate to follow the lead of the House of Representatives and pass the Paycheck Fairness Act. Women and their families literally can't wait any longer. The Paycheck Fairness Act. We're talking about policy. We're talking about elections. We're dealing with how politics impacts every aspect of our lives. Okay, what happened on YouTube? Why we stop broadcasting on YouTube? I don't understand this. Let's see here. Okay, why did it end? All right, let's keep going. So black women will lose an estimated $946,000 over a 40-year career. Louisiana African American women are paid on average 47 cents for every dollar the average white male makes. And when we look at the Paycheck Fairness Act, now let's continue with this for just a second. Advanced education among African American women has not been shown to lower the wage gap. In fact, the wage gap is largest for the most educated African American women. Doctorate degree holders who are black women tend to make 60% of what their white male counterparts make. Doctorate degree holders who are black women tend to make 60% of what their white male counterparts make. Quote, black women have the highest student loan debt of any racial or ethnic group. For an undergraduate degree, the average black woman carries nearly $30,400 in debt compared to $19,500 for white men. The wage gap lessens black women's ability to pay off educational debt, creating an additional barrier to saving money that could be used to buy a home, start a business, or used for emergencies, the report stated. Now, for African American men, they make about 80%, 80 cents on the dollar of what the average white male makes. African American men are saddled with student loan debt as well, and that reduces our ability to create wealth, pay off debt, buy a home, etc. So this is real. All this ties to policy also. Okay? All this ties to policy as well. Now, very quickly here, if we look at the Paycheck Fairness Act, Vox.com has an article for March 27th, 2019. March 27th, 2019. Okay? March 27, 2019. The House just passed a bill to close the gender gap. This deals with the Paycheck Fairness Act. House Democrats easily passed the Paycheck Fairness Act on Wednesday, their latest in a long series of attempts to make sure women and men are paid equally. The final vote was 242 to 187. Democrats were joined by 7 Republicans. Democrats were only joined by 7 Republicans to make sure women are paid fairly. Now, if we look at page 2, what's in the Paycheck Fairness Act? Now, the Paycheck Fairness Act essentially works to close loopholes in the landmark Equal Pay Act of 1963, which required that men and women receive equal pay for equal work. Now, let's see here. The Equal Pay Act says employers cannot differentiate salary based on gender unless a number of factors, including seniority, merit, and work level, come into play. On its face, it makes sense. A new entry-level employee would not be paid the same as a higher-level employee with more experience. But over the years, women found out that they were making far less than male colleagues with the same experience and job titles. The most well-known example is Lily Ledbetter, who sued her employer Goodyear Tire. Sued her employer Goodyear Tire after finding out male managers with less experience were getting paid more money than she was as a female manager. Now, Lily Ledbetter's crusade resulted in the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which President Barack Obama signed into law in 2009. The law changed the Civil Rights Act so that workers could sue for fair compensation up to 180 days after receiving a discriminatory paycheck from their employers, rather than when the salary decision was made. Now, let's look at this. It was dealing with the Paycheck Fairness Act. As Vox.com's Alexandria Fernandez Campbell wrote, the Paycheck Fairness Act that was passed in March of 2019 did not exactly work as intended. Well, she was referring to the Equal Pay Act of 1963 didn't exactly work as intended. Progress has been hampered in a number of ways. There are several reasons for the pay difference. Women are less likely to negotiate pay and more likely to be penalized when they try to negotiate pay. Women are also more likely to choose career fields that pay lower salaries and are often pushed out of the highest paying professions in the country, which reward workers who put in long hours, schedules that disproportionately hurt working mothers. Okay, now there was another article I had here that talked about the Paycheck Fairness Act thing. Yeah, this one here. Okay. This is from Forbes.com. Forbes.com's business publication. Forbes.com. On Black Women's Equal Pay Day, here's how women are fighting to close the gap. Okay. And actually in 2019, Black Women's Equal Pay Day was on August 22nd. It was actually August 22nd. So I think the previous year was August 7th. I think 2018 was August 7th. 2019, it came 2 or 3 weeks later, August 22nd. Okay. So let's look at page 5 of the article from Forbes.com. The Paycheck Fairness Act, which has passed through the House of Representatives, but is not yet through the Senate, is one step in the right direction. If passed, the legislation would prohibit employers from viewing job applicants' salary history, require companies to provide pay information by race and gender to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and allow employees to openly discuss salaries with colleagues without repercussions. Quote, you can't challenge the fact that you're being paid less than the white guy across the hall if you have no idea what any of your coworkers say, or what any of your coworkers make, says Emily Martin, Vice President for Education and Workplace Justice at the National Women's Law Center. But Emily Martin says, quote, there's other important work to do to close the race and gender wage gap that is not just about tightening pay discrimination laws. This includes initiatives like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, since black women are overrepresented in low-wage work, and working to strengthen pregnancy and family leave policies. So this ties into the family. This ties into paid leave, sick days, paid leave in the bill that the House of Representatives is pushing, dealing with the coronavirus. Plus, Because black women are more likely to be the unmarried head of household, they benefit from regulations that ensure affordable child care, paid leave, and work-life balance. Okay, now, also we have to look at, if you saw one of my broadcasts I did back in, I think it's October or November, it's predicted that up to 4.5 million African Americans could lose their jobs to automation over the course of 10 years. BlackEnterprise.com has an article, October 10th, 2019. 4.5 million African Americans could lose their jobs to automation. And it's African American men that could be hit the hardest, who are working in low wage jobs. BusinessInsider.com has the article, Artificial Intelligence is slated to disrupt 4.5 million jobs for African Americans, who have a 10% greater likelihood of automation-based job loss than other workers. Black men without a college degree are particularly vulnerable to job loss, while black women will fare better than even general white and Asian American populations. And that's because in this situation, because African American women are more likely to have a degree. African American workers are at a 10% higher risk to losing their jobs from automation than the general population. Automation and artificial intelligence will impact black men and black women differently. While the general black population is 10% more at risk for job disruption, the number jumps to 30% for African American men without a college degree. In fact, the researchers estimate that 28% of jobs held by African American men without a college degree will get disrupted by automation and artificial intelligence by the year 2030. Now, African American women are currently overrepresented in jobs that will see growth in the next decade, like nursing, like nursing assistants and home health aides. However, African American and Hispanic women are still paid the least out of every racial gender pairing. So check out this article from BusinessInsider.com. BusinessInsider.com. Artificial intelligence is slated to disrupt 4.5 million jobs for African Americans, who have a 10% greater likelihood of automation job loss than other workers. So all this deals with the economy. The economy is shaped by policies, laws, regulations that are written by people who are either voted into office or people who are appointed by people who are voted into office. So politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is what politics is. So when you hear me talk about 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans, this is what I'm talking about. So I oftentimes hear people say, well, these politicians, nobody's going to do anything for black people. It's not always about what somebody can do for you. When you understand principles of political self-defense, which is a term that I've coined in what I teach about, political self-defense, it's also understanding how to block what someone's trying to do to you. And it's understanding this more strategically. Policies are going to impact you positively or negatively. They don't have to be specifically written for African Americans to positively impact you. $15 an hour is not written specifically for African Americans, but it's going to disproportionately positively impact African Americans, especially African American women. So when we go back to the article from finance.yahoo.com, coronavirus to impact low-wage black workers the most, we see that only a third of the workforce in the country is able to work from home, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS.gov, Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is the Labor Department. This is the department that tracks the unemployment rate, the labor force, things like this. Nationwide, more than 32 million workers don't have access to paid sick leave. Nationwide, more than 32 million workers do not have access to paid sick leave. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 92% of higher wage earners receive paid sick time compared to their lower income counterparts. Only 31% of workers with salaries in the bottom 10% have this benefit. Now, paid sick leave also impacts some sectors more than others, according to the Economic Policy Institute, the EPI. According to the Economic Policy Institute, only 48% of workers in the leisure and hospitality industry have access to paid sick leave. Only 48% of workers in the leisure and hospitality industry have access to paid sick leave, which means 52% don't. Now, Elise Gould, G-O-U-L-D, senior economist at EPI, Economic Policy Institute, says that due to the amount of time these workers spend interfacing with the public, they are particularly at risk not just for getting sick, but for spreading the illness, as they are, quote, less likely to stay home if they are experiencing symptoms. So there's an economic factor that's going to hit these low-wage African-American workers who may not be able to go to work because they're sick and they don't have paid sick leave, so they won't get paid. And then there's also a factor where many of them are coming into contact with a lot of people, and they're more at risk of catching the coronavirus. Okay, so they are they're multiple. They're going to be hurt in multiple ways here. So economically, Elise Gould says these workers are the most likely to suffer the most. These workers are the most likely to suffer the most, as many face work hour reductions. So restaurants have less traffic come in because the conferences are being canceled, and not as many people are staying at the hotels, and flights are being canceled. So the hotels cut back on staff. The restaurants cut back on staff. Okay, this hurts many low-wage earning African Americans. Quote, it's a little bit of a snowball effect for that population, she said. They are more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck and will have a harder time because they have limited resources. They are more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck and have a harder time because they have limited resources. As fewer people go to restaurants, travel, and spend money at hotels, workers in those industries suffer from reduced business and dollars that can translate into tips. Quote, this is highlighting the vast inequality in this country, Elise Gould said. And some people are going to get hurt so much more than others. That hurt could be long lasting. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen over the course of this virus. Now, many African Americans were hurt by Donald Trump's 35-day partial government shutdown. Some of them have not recovered from that. Some of them may have lost their apartments, lost their homes, Some of them have not recovered from that, and then you have this taking place as well. This is dealing with how government shapes the economy, which impacts your economic condition. This is an example of how elections have consequences. So if you saw my broadcast from Super Tuesday, Tuesday, March 3rd, March 10th, Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, because we voted in Michigan in the primary. And people asked me, who'd you vote for? I said, I voted for me and you, your mama and your cousin too. That's what I voted for. Because I'm voting for policies, not personalities. I'm voting for policies that will impact my community and impact African Americans across the country. When we vote, it shouldn't be based upon the personality. It should not be based upon a political party. It should be based upon the policies and how the policies impact us as a collective, not as an individual. Because you may vote for, or I may vote for, a policy that is beneficial for me, but could be harmful to the community. So we have to vote based upon policies that benefit us as a collective. Because I think if we do that, eventually it will also benefit us positively individually. Because it will help lift us up more so than voting selfishly for policies that may be beneficial for me individually, but could be in general harmful to African Americans as a collective or to our communities. It can impact our communities negatively, but they can be as an individual beneficial. So we have to think as a collective. We have to understand how policies impact African Americans collectively. So if we continue here with this article from finance.yahoo.com, Elise went on to say, Elise Gould went on to say, we don't know what's going to happen over the course of this virus. Now, among the working poor, African American workers will be harmed the most. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, African American and Hispanic workers are more than twice as likely to earn poverty level wages compared to their white counterparts. This BLS.gov again, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Roughly 8% of African American and Hispanic workers earn wages below poverty level compared to just 4% of white workers. Roughly 8% of African American and Hispanic workers earn wages below poverty level compared to just 4% of white workers. Women of color struggle in particular. 10% of African American women and 9% of Hispanic women are classified as the working poor. 10% of African American women and 9% of Hispanic women are classified as the working poor, compared to 3.5% of white men who are classified as the working poor. Elise went on to say, quote, there's a lot of occupational segregation in this country. There's a lot of occupational segregation in this country. So when we think of those low-wage workers, they're more likely to be women, African American, and Hispanic workers. This could hit some communities more than others. Roughly 8% of African American and Hispanic workers earn wages below the poverty level. And it's unclear how badly hit these vulnerable populations will be as COVID-19 continues to batter the American economy. Elise Gould went on to say, we don't know what will happen when people can't pay their rent or their mortgage. Will we see the economic devastation spread? Will the government step up? So this article is from March 12, 2020. So we saw the government stepping up. We saw Democrats in the House of Representatives leading the charge. We saw Nancy Pelosi negotiating with Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin. Okay, now hopefully this passes the Senate. If it passes now, late Friday, Donald Trump came out and supported the bill. Hopefully it passes the Senate and gets past Moscow Mitch McConnell. On Capitol Hill, both Democrats and the White House proposed economic relief measures. Donald Trump unveiled a proposal for payroll tax cuts. The Democrats are not supporting that because that benefits largely big business. The bill from the Democrats in the House of Representatives is focused on Main Street, not Wall Street. It's focused on Main Street, not Wall Street. It's focused on helping the everyday people. Fatima Goss Graves is president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center. Referring to the bill from the House of Representatives, which is called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So the bill that Republicans, especially Donald Trump, are pushing would benefit corporations. The bill the Democrats are pushing, now I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I study policies and I'm looking at whose policies are most beneficial for us in general and who's blocking those policies from being signed into law. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. So the bill is called Families First Coronavirus Response Act, a bill that will provide food assistance, paid sick leave, and extra funds for unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance benefits. Fatima Goss Graves, president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, said this bill is a critical down payment on ensuring that families and communities in the direct path of this crisis do not have to choose between following the advice of public health experts and risking their livelihood. The investments in nutrition assistance and Medicaid will help families better weather this storm and mitigate the economic ripple effects. But this crisis is already exposing and worsening every inequality in our country right now. So it's interesting how Donald Trump talks about how this is the greatest economy in the history of this country, which is not, based upon percentage of GDP, based upon GDP, is not the greatest economy in the history of this country. But it's interesting how Donald Trump says that. And at the same time, you need a bill like this. But Donald Trump ignores things, like if we look at this article from abcnews.go.com, which is the official website of ABC News, abcnews.go.com. 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank for emergency reserves, as reported by the Federal Reserve. 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank for emergency expenses, as reported by the Federal Reserve. So it's interesting how Trump doesn't mention something like this. This is from May 24th, 2019. May 24th, 2019. Just a second here. The numbers are pretty similar to 2017. Almost 40% of American adults would not be able to cover a $400 emergency with cash, savings, or a credit card charge that they could quickly pay off, a Federal Reserve study finds. About 27% of those surveyed would need to borrow the money or sell something to come up with the $400. About 27% of those surveyed would need to borrow the money or sell something to come up with the $400, and an additional 12% would not be able to cover the expense at all, according to the Federal Reserve's 2018 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households, released. This came out in May of 2019. In addition, 12% of adults said they would not be able to pay their current monthly bills if faced with the unexpected $400 expense, the survey found. The 2018 results are very similar to those from the Federal Reserve's 2017 survey. Overall, the number of people who said they are able to handle unexpected expenses is on the rise since the Federal Reserve began the survey in 2013. However, 17% of adults in the 17% of the adults in the USA said said they are not able to fully pay off all of their current month's bills. Meanwhile, medical costs yielded other hurdles. 1 in 5 adults had major unexpected medical bills to pay last year in 2018, and 1 in 4 skipped necessary medical care in 2018 because they could not afford it, the survey revealed. This is from abcnews.go.com, May of 2019. 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank for emergency expenses. Okay, so check out that article. Now, okay, how's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. And we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. On my personal page on Facebook, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. And also on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and on my Periscope page on Twitter, The AHN Show, The AHN Show. So follow us on all those social media platforms. You can donate to the African History Network, $ The AHN Show through Cash App, $ The AHN Show through Cash App. Then also paypal.me/The AHN Show through PayPal, paypal.me/The AHN Show. And or you can go to our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button, and you can donate there as well. Right, so African American business owners supposed to name your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. So we have some new advertisers here. The book Black Heroes of Fire, Black Heroes of Fire, is written by DeKalb Walcott Jr., and it is the story of the history of the first African American fire company in Chicago, engine number 21. Black Heroes of Fire introduces and describes the background of the members of Engine 21, Chicago's first organized paid African American firefighting company. Find out about the heroism of these African American firefighters and more. Is available at Amazon.com and the website BlackHeroesOfFire.com, BlackHeroesOfFire.com, written by author DeKalb Walcott Jr. Now, a lot of people are looking for products like handcrafted soaps and natural toothpaste. SageandElmApothecary.com, SageandElmApothecary.com can provide these services for you. Can provide these products for you. They create unique products, especially with you in mind. At Sage and Elm Apothecary, they use simple ingredients such as whole fruits, herbs, and vegetables. Each product crafted offers a unique plant-based experience. They have over 60 different beautifully handcrafted soaps, natural toothpaste, hydrating oils, deodorants, face masks, shampoos, conditioners, and so much more. Visit their website, sageandelmapothecary.com, APOTHECARY. You can order from their website. Also find out about their pop-up shops and vending events. They have a current promotion right now. Use promo code AHNspring20.com, AHNspring20.com for their current spring promotion. Now, a lot of people are traveling, driving. You may not fly, but you may drive. And you can carry your culture with you with blacklionleather.com. So blacklionleather.com sells unique travel accessories. They are a unique travel accessory brand. They manufacture and sell online to the culturally inspired African American traveler. They are 100% African American owned and operated. Their motto is carry your culture. Carry your culture. So before you go on your next trip, visit blacklionleather.com. Blacklionleather.com. You can look at their leather accessories there and let them know you found out about this from the African History Network. Okay, let's go back to the article from finance.yahoo.com. Coronavirus to impact low-wage black workers the most. Written by Kristen Myers from March 12, 2020. Coronavirus to impact low-wage black workers the most. We know only 1/3 of the workforce in general can work from home. Only 31% of workers with salaries in the bottom 10% have paid sick leave. 92% of high-wage earners receive paid sick time, and only 48% of workers in the leisure and hospitality industry have access to paid sick leave. So, Donald Trump slammed the Democrats on Twitter on March 12th that was either Wednesday or Thursday. He slammed them on Twitter for not supporting his payroll tax cut. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, also criticized Democrats, calling their plan completely partisan and unworkable. Donald Trump is proposing a payroll tax cut. He's focused on corporations. The Democrats in their bill, entitled Families First Coronavirus Response Act, is focusing on everyday people. Now, Elise Gould said that while a payroll tax cut, quote, makes a lot of sense, end quote, it relies on people continuing to stay in the workplace. She said if you're just cutting hours and you operate some sort of payroll tax credit through work, that depends on you working instead of giving more direct cash to people, she said. Quote, Congress must take immediate action to shore up our nation's unemployment system, protect families from eviction and homelessness, and protect the child care, protect the child care, health care, and home care workers who serve as the backbone to our nation's economic and public health infrastructure. All right, now if we look at go back to the article from NBCnews.com and look at the bill that the Democrats in the House negotiated. And once again, this article from NBCnews.com, House Democrats and White House reach deal on coronavirus aid package. Let's see. Okay, Nancy Pelosi said, we are proud to have reached an agreement with the administration to resolve outstanding challenges and now will soon pass the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. The deal was struck after numerous conversations over the last 2 days between Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. They spoke 13 times on Friday, March 13th. Donald Trump greenlighted the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act and later tweeted his approval of the deal. He tweeted, "I fully support H.R. 6201, Family's First Coronavirus Response Act, which will be voted on in the House this evening. This bill will follow my direction for free coronavirus tests and paid sick leave for our impacted American workers I have directed." Steve Mnuchin confirmed the deal in an interview with Fox Business. He said, "We have an agreement that reflects what the president talked about in his speech the other night, referring to Trump's assurances that a deal would include help with sick leave and paid medical leave." In a letter to her colleagues about the deal, Nancy Pelosi said, quote, "This legislation is about testing, end quote. Now, Pelosi said the legislation would facilitate free coronavirus testing, including for those who don't have insurance, including those for the uninsured. The measure also includes 2 weeks of paid sick leave, and paid family and medical leave to assist people who lost their jobs amid the outbreak. Pelosi said the bill strengthens unemployment insurance and boosts food security initiatives like food stamps. It also increases federal funds, quote, for Medicaid to support our local, state, tribal, and territorial governments and health systems so that they have the resources necessary to combat this crisis, end quote. Now, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said at a pre-vote news conference Friday night that Democrats could have passed the bill Thursday, quote, "but we thought that it would be important to show the American people, to assure the American people that we are willing and able to work together to get a job done for them." Okay, so check out this article. House Democrats and White House reach deal on coronavirus aid package. Okay. So we'll post a link here to this article. You can check that out. And then I think we have the one from the New York Times then with the fact checking. Yeah. Trump's false claims about his response to the coronavirus. So this was at his press conference on Friday, March 13th. Trump's false claims about his response to the coronavirus. And then also we know that there's a good fact checking from NPR.org for March 13, 2020. Fact check Trump's accusations about the Obama administration and swine flu. So you can read that as well. Because Trump just keeps lying on President Barack Obama. Okay, Donald Trump inaccurately described travel restrictions he had announced falsely. He had announced, so Donald Trump inaccurately described travel restrictions he had announced. He falsely blamed his predecessor, Barack Obama, for testing shortages and misstated the role Google was playing in mitigating the outbreak. This is from the New York Times. So, as he declared a national emergency over the coronavirus outbreak, Donald Trump attempted to deflect criticism of his administration's response to the virus with inaccurate claims. So then they lay out a fact check. Donald Trump wrongly blamed the Obama administration for coronavirus testing shortages and falsely said it didn't do testing. He falsely said the Obama administration did not do testing during the swine flu epidemic in 2009. I watched the press conference he gave, and he just stood there and lied. He said, quote, "I don't take responsibility at all because we were given a set of circumstances and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time." Okay, so that's false. The Food and Drug Administration issued a draft guidance in 2014 in which it sought to extend its authority to regulate laboratory developed tests. But it's wrong to blame that effort for the scattered and insufficient delivery of coronavirus tests, as the guidance was not particularly relevant to emergency situations and was never finalized or generally enforced. A law enacted in 2004 created the process and requirements for the use of unapproved products in public health emergencies. Under the law and guidance set by the Trump administration itself, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, requires developers of laboratory developed tests to submit information and to comply with certain procedures. The agency said in early March that it would permit unapproved tests for the coronavirus for 15 days while developers are preparing their emergency authorization request. Neither the 2004 law nor subsequent amendments restricted the Trump administration from doing so, nor did it hamper previous administrations in fast tracking testing for other health crises. Nor did it hamper previous administrations in fast tracking testing for other health crises. So Trump is just lying. He also went on to say, if you go back to the swine flu, it was nothing like this. They didn't do testing like this. And actually, they lost approximately 14,000 people, and they didn't do the testing. They started thinking about testing when it was far too late. That's what he said at the press conference on Friday at the Rose Garden at the White House. He was lying. That's false. That this is blatantly wrong. This is the New York Times fact-checking him. He's just lying. Diagnostic tests for the swine flu were approved and shipped out less than 2 weeks after the H1N1 virus was identified and a day before the first death in the United States. Diagnostic tests for the swine flu were approved and shipped out less than 2 weeks after the H1N1 virus was identified and a day before the first death in the United States. Okay? Donald Trump said they didn't do testing like this, and actually they lost 14,000 people, and they didn't do the testing. They started thinking about testing when it was far too late. The Center for Disease Control, so the fact-checking goes on to say, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, identified the first case of the virus on April 14, 2009. The Obama administration declared swine flu a public health emergency on April 26, 2009. The Food and Drug Administration approved a rapid test for the virus 2 days later. At the time, the CDC had reported 64 cases and 0 deaths. The CDC began shipping test kits to public health laboratories on May 1st, 2009, at 141 cases and 1 death. 141 cases reported and 1 death. And the second test was approved in July 2009. From May 2009 to September 2009, the agency shipped more than 1,000 kits, each one able to test 1,000 specimens. To be sure, researchers found flaws and limitations in the test, but testing was conducted. A vaccine became available in early October 2009, but amid reports of shortages, President Obama declared the outbreak a national emergency later that month, later October 2009. The estimated death toll in the United States from the H1N1 epidemic was 12,469 from April 2009 to April 2010. That's the estimated death toll. So Donald Trump inaccurately described a website in development to mitigate the outbreak. He said, I want to thank Google. Google is helping to develop a website. It's going to be very quickly done, unlike websites of the past, to determine whether a test is warranted and to facilitate testing at a nearby convenient location. Okay, this is misleading. Donald Trump misstated the company developing the website and exaggerated its scope, the scope of the website. After Trump spoke, Google issued a statement on Twitter from Verily, V-E-R-L-I-Y, Verily, V-E-R-I-L-Y, Verily, which is a separate subsidiary of Google's parent company. The tweet said, we are developing a tool to help triage individuals for COVID-19 testing. Verily, which is a separate subsidiary of Google's parent company. It's not Google, it's a separate subsidiary of Google's parent company. The tweet goes on to say, Verily is in the early stages of development and planning to roll testing out in the Bay Area with the hope of expanding more broadly over time. The statement read. A spokeswoman for Verily said it had originally intended for the website to be used only by healthcare workers. Donald Trump's statement prompted the company to make it available to the public. The spokeswoman for Verily said it had originally intended for the website to be used only by healthcare workers. Donald Trump's statement, he was just, I don't know what he was talking about. Donald Trump's statement prompted the company to make it available to the public. The site will direct people to pilot sites for testing in the Bay Area, the spokeswoman said. If the pilot goes well, the subsidiary Verily aims to deploy the project nationwide, but there is no timetable for a national rollout. Okay, so this is just misleading. Okay, so you can check out the rest of this. This is from New York Times, nytimes.com, New York Times fact check Trump's false claims about his response to the coronavirus. Times of crisis like this, you need a president who's going to tell people the truth, not lie to try to prop up the stock market, be competent, listen to the experts, not think that they know more than the experts. See, elections have consequences. Then also look at the fact checking from NPR.org. Fact check Trump's accusations about the Obama administration and swine flu. Okay, that's from March 13, 2020. Fact check Trump's accusations about the Obama administration and swine flu. And then in the broadcast I did March 12th, I gave you tips from Detroit Free Press, freep.com. They have tips from the CDC, how to stay safe and stop the spread of the virus. Coronavirus in Michigan, how to stay safe and stop the spread of the virus. So this is some good information as well. So check that out at freep.com. We'll give you that link also. Okay, so hopefully this information helped you. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Turn on the notifications when we go live. Listen to the audio podcast of all these broadcasts. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the homepage, listen to podcasts. Wherever you get your podcast from, search for the African History Network show. We're on 8 different audio podcast platforms. We also, for African American business owners, we also put your commercial into the audio podcast of our various broadcasts, so people will hear your company promoted in our podcast on iTunes, Castbox, Acast, Stitcher, FM Player, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio, etc. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications there, and follow us on Periscope, The AHN Show, on Twitter and Periscope, The AHN Show also. Okay, listen to our Sunday night show, the African History Network show, Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF, and we broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, also Sunday nights also, okay, and on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. All right, so we have to get out of here. Hey, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace.